Record. We are recording. Hooray!
Right.
So, welcome everybody. We're glad you're all here. My name is Carice, and I'm the log marketing manager here at Sashco. Paul Peebles is also on. He's going to be throwing in some color commentary. He's our Southeast Territory manager based out of Nashville. And Jim, who is our favorite stain geek, also known as senior chemist here at Sashco. We are all glad that you guys decided to join us today. And like I said, I hope that you get a good refresher on Sashco's two main stains. We're not going to hit on transformation, siding, and trim tonight, but we are going to hit on capture and cascade, as well as transformation, log, and timber, and hopefully go into primarily some of the application quirks about our stains. Everybody has probably worked with or sold other oil-based stains and water-based stains, so how our Sashco is a little bit different. So we're going to do a quick overview of the 3 different stain technology types, their pros and cons, where ours fit in. We'll go through each of Sashco stains' performance information, application quirks, color and sheen options, and then we'll have Q&A time. So we'll rush through as best we can and give you all the basics. And then if you have any questions, I'll let you guys unmute yourselves at the end, and we'll make sure to answer all of those. And I will be posting this on YouTube next week for anybody who wants to share it with, any of your customers, any of your crew, anybody else who is missing tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started. So Jim and Paul, take it away. I'm going to mute myself so I'm not making all the noise here.
Jim, do you want to do this, or do you want me to do this one?
Sure. We can go back and forth a little bit if you want. I'll start off here. Of course, when you go to stain a log structure or timbers, then of course we want to do it after we've done proper prep. So that means we've prepped the wood down to basically bare wood. We've done whatever we want to do, whether it's going to be sanding, media blasting, power washing, whatever it takes to get that wood down to be good sound wood. That's what we want to do. Of course, it's going to be dry and a little bit textured and probably warm, right? Not as opposed to frozen. So there's lots of different ways we can prep it, but in the end, it comes down to something that looks kind of like the wood that's on your screen there. What I like to have people do is do some extra testing at that point to see if they need to do any more prep. For myself, I like to recommend using some packing tape or duct tape, good strong tape, and you can put it over some areas of the wood, especially if there's some stain on there, and then yank it off. And by doing that, you can see is whatever is still there strongly attached to the wood, or do you need to do a little bit more prep? So you do that in a couple places, and you can really get a good idea of how sound is that wood at the surface level. I also like to see people do a little bit of a water splash test, which might sound a little counterintuitive, splashing a nice dry wood with some water. But it is important to see, does that water just soak into the wood? That's a really good sign if it does. That means you can probably use almost any water-based stain in that on that wood. If it beads up though, that means you either still have a coating on there, or that there are some non-drying oils or silicone oils or something like that that are in the wood. And in that kind of case, when it beads up, you probably have to stick with a solvent-based stain. So those are the 2 big things. The other thing that the water splash test does is if you had any gray wood on the wood previously, before you actually started to prep it, and you think you've gotten most of that gray wood off, what the water splash will do is it'll highlight any areas of gray that are still there that you still need to do a little more prep on to get it off. Because if you stain over those areas, it's just going to turn mostly black, and nobody likes that, right? Paul, you have anything to add?
No. Believe it or not.
A man, a few words. This is actually information that Paul reminded me to put in here, because we often skip over just these 5 prerequisites, 5 big ones. So Paul hit on those, and where you've kind of seen people miss more often than not.
All of those have to occur at the same time, or it doesn't work. And the prep is the most important part of the job. If if the whole job is 100%, then prep's going to be somewhere around 75% of the job.
That's right. So where I see people want to try to skimp, obviously in the wintertime on that warm wood, I need to get this job done. Things were, warm enough during the day, and it's true, those log surfaces will get warm enough. But then they can, if they're not tarped off and really kept warm with a water-based product, you have major problems with freezing, and with an oil-based, things don't wet out the surface quite properly, you get frost on the surface and that kind of thing. So while we know that sometimes as contractors, you guys have to take your risks where you might, that's the way I put it. Just be aware of what the consequences could be, and be prepared to adjust or make any repairs if something comes up. Don't like, obviously none of us like having to cut corners, but there is no such thing as the perfect and ideal job and weather conditions at any job. There's always something that's going to go wrong. So just make sure that you're accounting for those risks.
And I will say one more thing. Warm wood doesn't have anything to do really with warm air. It's the temperature of the wood that makes a difference. I don't care how warm it gets in the daytime or cold. It's the wood that really makes the difference.
Right. Jim, anything to add?
I think that's mostly it.
Okay.
I will say one other thing where people sometimes run into trouble is we try to have everybody work in the shade where possible. Generally, that's the best location to be staining in, as opposed to in direct sunlight. Direct sunlight causes things to dry out very quickly. If you do it with oil-based stains, sometimes they can even start to bubble up a little bit and things like that. So
Right.
yeah, outside of the sun, try to work in the shade as much as you can. Although, like Carice said, sometimes you just have to work where you have to work. So
Figure things out along the way.
that's it. No job is ideal.
That's right. But with Color Fast, we're trying to make it a little bit more ideal. How do you like that? That was a nice segue. I'm in marketing, but we do a little bit of sales too here in marketing at Sashco. Color Fast is our pre-stain base coat. And really what it's going to help with is there are sometimes that damaged wood that goes beyond the surface that you can't see, even with a splash test, until you start staining. And Color Fast fills in those pores, it consolidates them, and really gives you a nice even canvas for stain application. So especially on restoration jobs where the porosity of the wood is just all over the board, Color Fast is going to be a huge time saver and frustration saver with the uneven absorption and the color just being a little bit off. But certainly Color Fast is also great on interior wood, helping prevent yellowing over time. You guys can see on the picture here, this panel was exposed to 550 hours of UV light, and this wood on the right here looks pretty darn close to brand new. And I know Mark would talk to you about a bench he's had sitting out for a while that he used some Color Fast on, and it's still looking good. So great product that's going to help keep the color the color. That's what we say. And so I don't want to spend too much time on Color Fast. Just know that it's a good product for using underneath the stain to give you that good even surface that you need for even color, and again, a great antioxidant, so you're going to get good performance out of both the stain and keep the wood in good shape longer.
So Carice, one thing to add, that left side of that wood panel there is not stained. That is actually UV damage.
Yeah.
So that's what you get from sunlight over the course of 6 months to a year or so.
Yeah, it's very yellow. We love the term picture frame effect. Nobody likes for it to happen.
Yep.
All right, so Jim, let's step into the different stain types and go through some quick pros and cons.
No problem. We have, we'll go over 3 basic types of stains. There are a few more beyond that, but the ones that we most commonly come across are going to be 2 different kinds of oil stains. The first one is the deep penetrating oil stains, and those don't ever dry. So those are going to be more like your motor oil type stains, right? Never dries to a hard film. The second type of oil stain is the ones that do dry, and those are shallow penetrating stains. Simply with the time and everything else, they don't get to penetrate quite as far before they harden up. And then the third category is surface stains, which covers all of the different water-based acrylics and even the urethanes and epoxies and things like that. So.
Perfect. So let's hit the deep penetrating non-drying oils, Jim.
Yeah. Well, we don't recommend the non-drying oils for log homes, primarily because sealants and chinking don't stick to them. They really do create a non-stick coating on the wood. And if you think about sealing around windows and doors and things like that, you just can't do it. Not the best for log homes, but that doesn't mean that they're bad stains. They actually work pretty well on shingles and fences and even decks and handrails and things like that at times. Really easy to apply. There's really no lap marks, no peeling. They just go on super easy. So it's great for DIYers and things like that in targeted areas. There is a little bit more maintenance with those. They don't usually last very long. I think you'll see some exposure panels later today showing that. Good examples, TWP, Q8 log oil, wood guard, a lot of things that are out there, right? Good old Thompson's water seal. If we move on to shallow penetrating stains, these are the ones that actually do dry. These are ones, and we'll talk about these strengths and weaknesses without silicones and waxes and non-drying oils. I like to think of those as the 3 evil ingredients in the coatings world, simply because those do cause a lot of problems when you do want to actually seal to those coatings. So just like the non-drying oils, they create a non-stick coating, which would allow you or prevent you from actually, sealing around windows and doors and things. So, but without those things, in general, these shallow penetrating drying oil stains, like your alkyds and your linseed oil type stains, they perform fairly well. They have pretty good penetration, very good recoatability. They're compatible with a lot of other products and sealants as well. On the weaknesses, since they're drying oils, they start off as tiny little oil particles, and as they cross-link with oxygen, they become a solid film. And that cross-linking never actually stops. So you might start off with a liquid, it goes to a solid, and then it continues to get harder and harder and harder as time goes by. And that means that they get hard and brittle, and they start to flake and peel over time. So good products, but they do have their own weaknesses as well. We could add in that the urethane versions oftentimes do not have very good breathability. So water vapor can get trapped inside logs if you use urethanes on them. So be aware of that. These shallow penetrating stains do come in 2 different versions. On the one side, you have the solvent-based version, and those are great for their ability to go over almost any other stain out there. On a restoration job, it's easy to go over all kinds of different products if you have to with an oil-based product. Those are the only ones also that give you that really good oil-based look. If you think about the beauty of oil-based stains on wood, it's almost like I call it like a stained glass window effect, right? You only get that with those oils, right? If we think about the weaknesses on that side, you still got to pay for a little bit. It's the solvent and the oil odors. They can actually persist for weeks or even longer, months of an oil odor coming off of a newly stained log home, especially in the sunshine. You get VOC restrictions, and of course, they're getting more expensive all the time. All that said, there's also a water-based version of these same kind of things. You see those as the water cleanup oils. And you get that water cleanup, fast dry times, low odor. But typically the solids are going to be lower and the durability is going to be quite a bit lower. So you have that as a disadvantage, as well as lap marks that we're listing here.
And I would just add on to that, those water-based versions are generally, for a DIYer, easier maintenance. A lot of them are eroding alkyds, so they turn a little bit, it's almost like powdery on the surface over time. So good for decks. Those water-based versions are kind of good for decks because they're easy to maintain. If you're going to do maintenance every 2 to 3 years, and I don't know about you guys, but I know very few people who do maintenance on a deck or a log home every 2 or 3 years. Generally 5 is what we see. So, some advantages for the DIYer. They're certainly not something that we'd recommend for log homes as frequently. So,
surface stains. That's going to be your acrylic stains for the most part. Now, acrylics have been used out there for, decades. I'm approaching 30 years in the coatings industry myself, and it was going on for decades before that. So, we're coming up on probably 50 years of using acrylics and their derivatives. There's a reason why they have become the predominant technology used to protect homes and things like that. It's because they're really, really durable. The sunlight really doesn't hurt them very much, so they're very durable that way. They're usually very water resistant, so they're also great for that. So just great products overall. They do come in a variety of forms. You can get them from anywhere from very hard, which on a log home would crack and peel very quickly, and you can also get them all the way down to the very soft end, like our capture product, where it will actually stretch and move with the logs as they are expanding and contracting with temperature and humidity. We'll go into that a little bit more. Acrylics are always water-based and they're easy to clean, things like that. But if you look at the weaknesses, really, because they're a surface stain, they're only sitting on the very surface. The acrylics are fairly large molecules. They don't really dive down into the wood very well. So you might get down into one wood cell or so, but not a whole lot further. So prep becomes more important. So making sure that you don't have any unsound layers, especially on the surface of the wood, is really important. It's got to be applied to good sound wood. Hardest part of using the water-based products is probably the dry time. They dry so quickly at times that really, if you want to do it, you really want to put it up as a crew and have like one person spraying it on, and then 1 or 2 people behind doing back brushing really quick. Whereas you might be able to get away with just one person doing it on a wall if you're using a solvent-based product. So a little different on their quirks.
right. All right. So now we'll take some time and go into the application quirks of Sashco's stains, particularly transformation log and timber, which is our shallow penetrating oil stain, and then capture and cascade as well. So we'll go into some of the features and benefits of the product, and what you won't find in other oil-based other products that are similar technology, as well as, like I said, the application details. So specifically about transformation log and timber, Jim went to town making a great very flexible formula. So as he talked about earlier, all oils are going to continue to cross-link over time, and eventually they're going to get brittle and hard and crack. And so he did everything he could to slow that down, reduce it.
Yeah, we keep it as soft as possible.
Right. As soft as you can for it being an oil, right?
Right. Now that's a surprise to a lot of people who have been used to using other oil-based stains. A lot of other oil-based stains are very hard and brittle. If you think about Sikkens, it's a very hard stain. And so when the logs move, it simply splits right there along any small crack and things like that. So they crack and peel faster than a transformation log and timber wood, which is soft enough to move with the wood more so. So.
Right. Very glossy sheen. You can see that in the picture here. And there's not an easy way to get a low gloss, even like a semi-transparent or anything like that right now. It's Jim's next challenge, I suppose, a big challenge, figuring out how to get a lower sheen. But we did when we first came out with transformation, did a lot of testing to make sure that it would go over previously applied deep penetrating oil-based stains, obviously with proper prep, and it works. So this is definitely your go-to if somebody has used, Chevron shingle oil. We've heard that. Or, some sort of other deep penetrating oil-based stain, or if they just don't know what's been on there in the past, this is going to be the safer product to use. Now, some people can use the water bases without any issues. There's no way of guaranteeing it. So you just have to be really careful about that and know the risks that are involved and the repairs that will be needed if you come across something that had deep penetrating oils and those oils migrate back up to the surface over time. They'll cause major adhesion problems with a water-based product that you won't have with the transformation log and timber. So let's go into some of the application quirks here for transformation. This is stuff you really want to know.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we find most often is that people apply it just like they would have done for a Sikkens product or something like that from the old days. And the transformation is a little bit different. It's partly because we've made it so soft, and that just causes some differences in how it actually applies. But it's also thin for its viscosity. We don't put a whole lot of things in there to build up the viscosity, which would give us a thick film of oil on the surface, because that's another way you can make it hard and brittle and crack. We try to make it so it has a thin, durable film. Anyways, typically what happens is what you can expect is you put the first coat on, and you're going to flood coat that all over the wood and get it into all the cracks and things like that. That's going to be fairly easy with transformation log and timber because it is a low viscosity solvent-based stain. It spreads out all over the place really well. That's going to soak right into the wood really deep. And if you see, I think Grace has her little cursor up there on the left-hand side of that top panel, it all gets soaked in and dull. That is totally normal for the first coat. We want it to actually soak in and lock itself into that top layer of the wood so that it gets some deep, deep protection.
And I'd just like to point out that my mouse skills here are better than Vanna. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
There you go. When you go ahead and put on a second coat, right, you're going to let that first coat dry thoroughly. You're going to put the second coat on, and then it's going to look like the right-hand side of that panel up there. And it should be uniformly glossy all over the place like that. And that's going to be that really thin layer at the surface that gives it a lot of water protection and UV protection right at the surface layer. And yet still be thin enough that it can move. So that's what we want to see. Now, sometimes what we see is that the second coat comes out dull or dull in spots. If you look over on that lower left picture, that's a log wall down below that. And you can see that there are spots on the bottom log right around the knot there where you get kind of almost some end grain. And on the first coat, a lot of stain goes in there and it takes longer to dry. And so when you go ahead and put a second coat on there, if it's too early, maybe you applied it late in the day one day, and then the next morning you go ahead and put on a second coat. It's just not enough dry time. What happens is that first coat is on there, but it hasn't cured up all the way, and the second coat kind of dissolves it, and it all soaks into the wood together to almost become a first coat all over again. That's not ideal because we don't have that top surface glossy layer that we want to see. So the solution is simply to let it actually cure up all the way and go ahead and put another little coat on. That second coat could be pretty thin. Doesn't have to be real thick, but you do need to wait long enough for it to actually, the first coat to cure. So,
And you guys need to know, this is very different from other oil-based stains out there. The dry time for transformation is pretty long. And that can be frustrating for some people. It's the puts and takes of creating a flexible oil. And so in a humid environment, a full 24 hours, sometimes 48 is necessary. And I know that affects your job site logistics. It's something Jim's been working on for 3 years now, trying to find a better dryer package that would not affect performance of the stain, because we did a survey a few years back with transformation users, and we have our marching orders. We cannot change the performance, the durability of the product, and we cannot change the beauty of the product. So those two things have to stay the same, whatever changes we end up making. And that just takes a lot of work. So just be prepared for that. You're going to get great durability out of transformation, but you do have to give a little bit on the front side with the application. So just be aware that ColorFast helps with that some, as far as the the blotchiness, but you still have to let the ColorFast fully cure before putting transformation over the top.
right. Typically, if it's just bare wood, that first coat will, and it's good warm weather, you can get away with about 24 hours of dry time. But if it's humid or cold, it might take you 2 days, right? Or if you go over ColorFast, it actually takes a little bit longer to dry when it goes over ColorFast as well. So, yeah, that's just how the stain is. Another thing that people find with transformation that's sometimes a little surprising is that it's a little bit rubbery or tacky feeling when they go to feel it with their hands. And they're used to a hard Sikkens type product, which they wouldn't be able to even scratch with their fingernails. And they're surprised that they can actually scratch it with their fingernails if they go up and dig them into the stain. And so they think that something's wrong, but it's not actually anything wrong. It's just a matter of it's soft so it can move with the wood. It does harden up, but it does take a couple of weeks of time for it to do that. Yeah, for that first couple of weeks, it is more of a rubbery, tacky feel than they might be used to. The third tip that we see occasionally is sometimes people get air bubbles coming through the stain. And that is most often seen with a sunlight type of situation. Either they've applied it in the sun, or they've applied it right in the shade before the sun came and hit that wall. In those cases, the air that is expanding inside the log as it heats up comes out through the path of least resistance, and it kind of bubbles up right underneath the stain. And if it happens at just the right timing, it's going to come out right underneath the stain when it's just formed a skin. And that's going to create a little bubble. Right. So again, try to work outside the sun.
Sorry, Jim, how do you fix those bubbles?
Typically, if it's just that really, really light, it's almost like a soap scum bubble, they can come back in with like a 3M type of abrasive pad and just kind of knock them off the top and then do a real light coat of stain.
Right, because there's not always any avoiding 100-degree temperatures in Missouri in the summertime.
For sure.
All right.
It doesn't happen on every piece of wood either. It's just certain pieces of wood are more prone to it than others.
Right. So here's our color line with transformation. I can tell you guys that gold tone medium, red tone medium, brown tone medium are the top sellers. All of the mediums seem to be what people like, but we also do quite a bit of natural. So for those who want to know what people generally like, it's those three, but don't feel like you are limited to just those colors. You can layer with Sashco stains, and we have another video that we did. We did a webinar, I don't know, year and a half ago on color layering. And I can send the link out to you guys for that. It's on our YouTube channel. That just kind of goes into the hows of color layering and how you can really expand the colors that you can offer to people by just putting the first coat on of one color and second coat of a second color. You can also, you know, mix the colors together if you want. We have some people who do that. You just have to make sure that you're keeping track of your ratios, and that you're letting your homeowners know that if they're going to be doing their own maintenance down the line. For maintenance on transformation, log and timber, generally we recommend gold tone light over most of the colors because it's so very lightly pigmented. It really doesn't shift the color a whole lot. The only exceptions to that are natural and brown tone light. Both of those contain some TiO2, some white, and you get kind of a weird greenish hue if you use gold tone light over those. So just more of the same color for those two. So just be aware of that. But yeah, maintenance is just a quick power wash and recoat with gold tone light, or like I said, brown tone light and natural. It doesn't need to be anything difficult. What I will tell you is that you know, Capture and Cascade is going to be more forgiving when it comes to delayed maintenance. If you go an extra season without doing maintenance, Capture and Cascade is going to be a little bit easier to do any spot repairs, transformation, because it soaks in and you get down to bare wood and you sand that all down, and then obviously how the stain absorbs in that one area that you sanded down is going to be different. So, you know, we tell you guys and you tell your customers, keep up on the maintenance. Don't let it go longer than, you know, maybe 6 months past what you really should be doing, and avoid some major prep having to do maintenance on one wall or something like that. So I know I talk in ideal land, so whatever, especially the south facing walls and west walls that are getting all the sun. Delayed maintenance is going to be harder with transformation. So just be aware of that.
I'll say also, you know, when should you maintain? You should maintain and put another coat of stain on as soon as you see any holes or anything else in the stain. If you see some like water damage happening underneath the stain, that's a good sign. Even if it's small, that there are some pinholes in the stain, and where water can actually get through. And that's going to be the part that really damages your stain quickly. So by doing a maintenance coat when the stain is 98% good, you can actually fill in those pinholes and kind of lock it in right at that point and not let it get any worse. A lot of people wind up waiting too long until they have, you know, areas where the stain is completely missing and it's gray, and that requires a lot more prep. You have to take those gray areas back down to bare wood and kind of spot treat those and everything else. So it's a lot more work before going over everything again with one coat of stain. So
Right.
If you do it earlier, it just saves a lot of work, and that prep is where a lot of the money is. So
That's where 90% of the money is, statistically, just in case you guys didn't know. And if homeowners balk, we do have homeowners who balk at the higher price of Sashco's products. We're not afraid to say our products are higher priced and they work better than the other products that you get out there. But at the end of the day, no matter what the job is, the products are only, you know, 7 to 10%, maybe 15% of the cost of the product, cost of the job. The rest is all in labor. You pros know that. And so when somebody's paying you thousands of dollars to have their home redone, don't let them skimp. It's a waste of your time and their money when you skimp. So, all right, moving on. Capture. This is a home in Big Bear, California that has Capture and Cascade on it. Isn't it pretty? So Capture is our water-based surface stain. It is, and I know that I'm gonna go into brag world here, but you know, I don't mind because it's just that good. It is the best performing water-based stain on the market. The best. You cannot get its equal. Other companies, bigger companies than Sashco, have taken it into their labs and tried to figure out what it is that makes Capture so good, and they can't figure it out, and we're not sharing. We're just going to tell you, and we'll prove to you that it's the best stain on the market. It is hyper flexible. It moves with the wood. Everybody knows the logs move a lot. And you get those micro cracks in the wood, and that's where all that moisture starts getting in and causing damage. Capture is able to span a lot of those micro cracks to prevent moisture from getting in the first place. But it's also highly breathable, so it's going to allow moisture to escape. It's our longest lasting stain, 15 plus years, and we'll have a picture for you later when it comes out, when we get to that slide to show you. So, and I know that Paul is particularly passionate about Capture Cascade. He has it on his own home. So Paul, I'm going to let you talk through some of these quirks on Capture Cascade.
Well, they're not quirks. They're just what you need to do to get it done right. I mean, I literally had one of the first Capture Cascade homes. I did it 25 years ago, and the original stain is still on 3 sides of that house, the south and west side. You know, being the professional I am, I never put the Cascade on there. And I finally, just 4 years ago, had to replace the stain on the southwest side. And I've also, in the past several years, gone back to many house where I can think of 4 real quick big projects that were applied in 99, 2000, 2001, 2002 that have been maintained correctly, that are just absolutely gorgeous. The good thing about this stuff is that it is easy enough that some homeowners will actually do the maintenance. But if you keep it clean, apply clear coat when you need to, it just absolutely works. The biggest question, and if the only gripe that I ever get about it is that, you know, I hate 2 coats. Well, you know, 2 coats of Capture work. When we first brought this product out, we used 1 coat, and we learned real quickly that 2 coats is necessary for a couple of reasons. One, human nature. I don't care how good you are and how hard you try, you can't get the penetration and just pumping that stain down into every little nook and cranny with brushing it 1 time as opposed to 2 times. So it's always 2 coats of Capture. The first one you need to spray it on there or ladle it on if you're one of those stubborn people that doesn't like to use a sprayer, but spray it on until it's running down the wall. And then when you go to back brush it, it's funny. You think, well, I put too much product on there, but it always goes in. Brush it quickly. Down here in the Southeast, we don't have as much trouble with having to be too fast because our humidity is so high. If you're out west though, in Colorado or Wyoming or wherever, and it's, you know, 85 degrees with a 25-mile-an-hour wind and 12% humidity, it does get to be a task to get that done. But if you do it right and you keep a wet edge, lapping is minimal, but really get it done in that first time, that first coat. Spray it till it runs off, brush it quickly as possible, keep a wet edge, let it dry pretty quickly. The good thing is that, guess what, your second coat can be applied in just a few hours. That builds the film thickness on there so that it has the elasticity and the bulk of product to stretch or span those small checks that occur out there. And then sometimes, you know, when you've got a stain that's not as flexible as this, you actually get cracks in the stain where there's not even any cracks in the wood. And that's where, if you look at the competitive products, if you look at Capture done when we used to do 1 coat for that short period of time, you'll see that it's really water damage that happens that starts to break down most of these type coatings. Into this other bullet point, now Cascade has to be applied, or you can do what I did and get about 2/3 left life out of your product. it's so easy to put Cascade on. I mean, you can literally just put it in a pump up garden sprayer or any type of sprayer and spray it on and about halfway brush out the runs. I've just had so much success. I've probably sold more Capture and Cascade than anybody at Sashco, and I don't know, millions and millions of dollars worth, and I just don't get any complaints. When it's done correctly, it just works, and that's about the best, personally, and then going back and happily seeing customers that have had, the same type of results that I have.
The advantage to making, products that work is that we do enjoy having a lot fewer complaints.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but you can see that little picture there. That's a little bit of Capture that was put in the bottom of a cup, and it actually stretches like caulk. So that's all. That's all I got to say about that.
All you got to say about that? Well, talking
there you
about
can
the
see-
one coat versus two coat issue, you can see this here. The difference between one coat and two coats. You really have to get that film build to get the protection. We've had some people ask, okay, with Color Fast, do I still have to put the two coats of Capture over top? And the answer is yes. The film will not be as thick as it would be if you were doing the drench coat, first coat, but you still have to build that film in order to get the right elasticity. It would be kind of like putting on a bead of caulk. We see this all the time, bead of caulk around a bathtub, and then you wipe most of it off with your finger when you go around and tool, and it ends up being too thin and it cracks the first time you get in the bathtub, and you feel it, or you fill the bathtub with water or whatever, and you get that joint expanding. You got to have thick enough film there in order for that elasticity to really kick in, if you will, and be effective.
I'll add in too, especially in this picture, you can see the cracks there in the wood. If you're going back to stain, any stain, you really want to fill those cracks in with stain. That's one of the common mistakes that we see when people are switching from maybe painting to staining log homes and things like that. Is they'll treat a stain like it's just a color coat, and so they'll mist some product over the very surface of the log, but they won't treat the inside of the log. And that's a very common mistake. But you got to just step back and understand that the surface of the log that will absorb water includes all of those little cracks. So we want to fill those with stain in order to protect the wood.
Right. So here's the available colors, out of the pail for Capture and Cascade. But again, so many more colors that you can get with layering. I know Mark's on the call. He's done some weathered wood and hazelnut. The main picture on our website, we have fondly called hazelnut. It's actually a 60-40 mix of chestnut and hazelnut. So we get a lot of requests for the color of that. But you can layer these, and because there's the clear coat that you can use on top of the Cascade Clear Coat, get a lot of different looks. And when I say a lot of different looks, also consider the sheen of the Cascade. A matte is going to give you a very different color and appearance than a semi-gloss. And yes, you can also mix the matte and the semi-gloss Cascade to get more of an eggshell if you want. You just have to, again, keep track of those ratios. But that is something that's possible out there. So don't be afraid to do some experimenting with different combinations. Believe it or not, mahogany and weathered wood is an amazing combination. I saw that and I said, oh, I would not have expected that look out of there. But there's also some really awful combinations. So do some experimenting and find the color. If your customer says, oh, that's just not quite as red as I want it, but I don't want a bright red, well, consider layering. You very well will be able to deliver on the color and the tone that they want by just combining a couple of different colors out of the box and not having to go to the paint store and get extra pigments added in. It just makes it easier for everybody when you're not going with a custom color, if you will, from the paint store. So how long can Capture and Cascade last with maintenance?
That picture looks familiar.
Yeah, I think I saw that a little bit earlier today.
Yep. This is a home which actually predates even the ones that Paul was talking about. This goes back to about 1998. And I had the pleasure of getting up there a couple years ago when it was, I think it was 18 or 19 years old for the stain job on it. And one of our early contractors had gone up there after coming to our ZF classes here at Sashco. And this was his first house that he had done after coming to class. So he came in and he blasted the whole home and then did 2 coats of Capture and Cascade. And then the big thing that he's done is he has come back every year to do maintenance on this home. A lot of times it's just a little bit of touch up here or there, but really over all those years, all those 18 years or so, the only thing that they had to do is they had to come back in and do the 2 vertical pillars there on the back of the home, and then one side of the garage over here on that side there, because they had waited just a little bit too long to put a coat of Cascade on. So they ground those down and put it on, and they've maintained it a little bit at earlier intervals now from that point forward. And they've continued to do that even now. We're still in contact with the same contractors. Actually, it was handed down from father to son. So the original contractor's son is continuing to work on the same home and getting the same money every year to help keep this home looking great. So this now has 23 years of life on this one stain job.
Right.
So maintenance goes a long way to keeping it looking good. If they've not done more or less yearly maintenance on this thing, you might get 5 or 8 years out of it before it starts looking bad enough you want to actually take it back down to bare wood.
And let me clarify, yearly maintenance does not mean they put a coat of Cascade on the whole home every year.
Correct.
It
Correct.
means they've gone back and checked it every year and done stuff where needed, when needed.
Yes.
That's
a lot of times you'll find that if you have some logs that really stick out into the air, a lot of times you see some rafter tails or something like that that really get out there in the air and collect a lot of snow and rain and dirt and things like that. Those need more maintenance than anything else. It's almost like a railing, where you almost have to do it every year to keep it looking really good. So they've gone back though, and they've inspected the entire home, cleaned it. That's a big part of maintenance that a lot of customers are almost surprised to hear they need to do. They expect that their home is always going to look miraculously clean without ever washing it down. So sometimes we get a little bit of education needed, but yeah, they've had a wonderful relationship with the homeowner, and it's been great for both of them for all these years.
And just so while we're on this picture, you see the shingles here, and obviously trim fascia board and that kind of thing. Capture, Cascade, Transformation, all of our stains can be used on any type of wood siding. Don't use them on decks. That's what I would tell you for Capture, Cascade, and Transformation Log and Timber. Although Tracy Turner, who's on the call, Chip, will swear by Transformation Log and Timber on decks. I still haven't learned his method for application, so I probably need to get with him. But in general, we don't recommend these 2 products on decks, but you can certainly use them, gable ends and trim board and that kind of thing, and it's gonna work well. So
from what I've heard, a single coat of Transformation Log and Timber on decks is pretty good. You get to a second coat and it can get slippery, or especially slippery. I will note one more thing. When you look at those gable ends being shingles, on a lot of homes, especially newer homes that are being produced today, those become like hardy board or fiber cement siding type products. And you got to be careful when you're staining those. If you try to do it with an oil-based coating, the alkaline nature of the cement will actually eat into the oil and cause it to fall off. But if you use an acrylic like Capture, it'll hold up just fine.
Yep.
So when you find some elements of a home that are fiber cement, go ahead and use Capture Cascade on those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so you might be wondering, or maybe you weren't wondering at all, but we're going to tell you anyways. How does Sashco test our stains? We have some exposure panel racks here at our factory. They're in Denver here at a mile high. They're facing due south at a 45-degree angle. We keep them out for at least 18 months, sometimes 2 years. You can see that they're clipped into the exposure racks. So the top half is covered and the bottom half is totally exposed. Sashco's, you know, obviously in Denver, we get 30% more UV than at
sea level.
level. I couldn't come up with the term. Holy moly, you can tell I probably need to eat. So it's, yeah, 30% more than at sea level. We have in Denver specifically the most extreme freeze thaw cycles of anywhere in North America. We will routinely go between, you know, 25 at night and up to 60s during the day. And that puts a lot of stress on wood. And that is how we test our products to make sure that they are going to perform well. Some people might think that, you know, a coastal environment is more extreme. It's extreme in some different ways, but with the amount of moisture and the freeze thaw cycles that we get here in Colorado, you're not going to get a much better test of products. So we do have some really great exposure panel reports that you can get from us. It's going to show a couple of them. We have one for capture and another one for transformation, log and timber. And what we did is we did side by side. I won't go into the methodology too much. You can read about it in the report, but side by side with other stains out in the market, Sherwin-Williams Woodscapes, Behr Premium, Cabot, Permachink. There's a whole lot in here. We're happy to email this report to you. It's a good tool to use with your homeowner customers to explain why the products are going to be a bigger piece or chunk, or if the homeowner is going to be buying their own stain, explaining to them why they should go with something that is going to be a little bit more expensive up front, but save them money down the road. So again, we have that for both transformation and capture and Cascade. So our information will be at the end of the presentation here. Shoot us an email, give us a call. These are on our website. You can go to the product pages on our website and download them yourself pretty quickly and easily. And use these as a good tool and understand the methodology behind the testing. So we're out of time. We took the full 55 minutes here. We have a few minutes for Q&A, people. So here is our contact information. Feel free now to unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can also put it in the chat box. I will make sure and answer those questions in there now. So Tracy asked you, are you going to ever do a gray in the transformation log and timber? Jim.
I can answer that. The problem with a gray in an oil-based coating is always going to be the yellowing and the yellow nature of the oils. You can get some fairly non-yellowing alkyds at times. So those are available, and some of our competitors actually have some grays based off those that don't look too bad. Unfortunately, for us, the oils that we use that are very soft in transformation are fairly yellow colored. So what that means is that when you go in and try to make a gray out of it, it actually kind of looks greenish. So people don't generally like a greenish looking gray. I could totally make one, but as it ages, it's going to get even more yellow and even more greenish looking over time. So it's just not a good look, in my opinion.
That's a harder one.
Yeah.
Tracy asked, what is too long to wait between coats? Obviously with capture, between capture and Cascade, because capture is so tacky, you could end up with a bunch of dirt stuck to the surface. If you wait for too long, you get a dust storm, or, I've seen in the south, somebody didn't get Cascade on soon enough, and then a hurricane came through. Stain held up beautifully, actually, but they had a whole lot of leaves stuck to the side of their house that they had to wash off before they put Cascade on. Paul, have you seen any instances where people have gone too long between coats?
I believe that question was asked about transformation while we were on the transformation page, and Jim was better to answer that question. I mean, I don't think there is too long means, not long enough for it to get dirty. You could go 3 or 4 or 5 days, I would assume. Correct, Jim?
You certainly can wait quite a while with transformation. I think maybe what you're getting at is the length of time window that you have to apply it for a lot of alkyd products that are out there. A lot of alkyds actually have a window fairly short right after you put on the first coat where you can apply it. And then they have a longer gap that you have to wait until after that point to actually apply a second coat. We don't have that kind of gap with transformation. So you can apply the second coat of transformation, 48 hours later, 24 hours later, that's fine. If you wanted to wait 3, 4, 5 days later, that's fine. 30 days later, that's fine too, right? There's really no point in there where you're going to run into delamination and adhesion problems.
Right, right. So kind of along the same lines of waiting for too long, the folks at Jackson Ace are asking, what happens if they don't do the second coat with the log or timber, or is it a requirement? We showed that the slide with the 2 coats with Capture and Cascade. You're going to get a similar detrimental effect with transformation if you don't do 2 coats.
Right. With that first coat being dull, what's going to happen is it's really mostly soaked down into the wood. So what's going to happen is the very surface of the wood is going to be more exposed to UV and water and things like that, abrasion, whatever else. And it tends to gray out a lot faster than it would if you put on a second coat. Now, with just 1 coat on there, it will be dull and fairly flat in most of the places. But it's also going to look a little bit spotty because there are going to be some spots where it doesn't soak in as well, and that's going to be a shiny, glossy spot. So it's generally not a look that people really want, and it does require more maintenance. We're not going to force you to do 2 coats, but we will highly recommend 2 coats.
Yes, absolutely. So question from Bruce. Do we still feel log and timber and capture started from the same point, a raw new log, will have equal durability? My answer to that is always going to be no. Capture is still probably going to last longer. How much longer is going to depend on maintenance that's done. Transformation's only been out for 14 years now, and there's some homes out there that still have original transformation on it. The formula was changed in 2011 to meet VOC requirements. So the jury is kind of still out. We have the proof with Capture and Cascade. And of course, the water being very flexible and not ever going to get to that point where it dries hard and cracks. The water base is going to last longer. But again, you can't use the water base in all situations. And the look that people want to get, the beauty of the semi-transparency and that stained glass window effect with transformation is just hard to beat. So best for what it is, but you're still going to get the better performance out of water-based products. So Jared, come on. Any chance you guys are working on a 2-coat wet on wet system like UV Card 2? No, not right now. I've had some people ask for either a 1-coat system. I know Ultra 7, they claim to be a 1-coat system. We've heard from a lot of contractors it's really more like a 1.5-coat system. But it is difficult to get that elastic film build that you have here with a 2-coat wet on wet without the dry time in between. So
I will say that you can put on a second coat of capture fairly soon, right? If you're doing a home, you could do a wall and then come back in maybe an hour later and do another coat, right? Really what you're looking for is you want it to be solidified at the surface, and it might still be a little bit tacky, but not wet anywhere. And then you could carefully get another coat on. You could push it a little bit, but it is better if you actually let it wait a little bit longer than that. 2
Right.
hours is better.
So Mark has a question. Is UV damage left after blasting detrimental to capture adhesion?
I'll answer that. That's absolutely true. Remember way back at the very beginning of the presentation, you saw the color fast and that yellowing happening on the one side. If you've gone through and blasted, and it's going to take you another week or so, or even 2 weeks to get to stain it, that UV damage does actually affect the adhesion of any stain that goes on after that. There are some studies out there that show 2 weeks of pre-weathering. That's what they call it, is pre-weathering. That's that UV damage time. That can actually affect the long-term durability of whatever paint or stain that you put on top of that. So we like to see things, stained fairly quickly after that. One thing you can do, and that is the color fast. You can blast and then put on the color fast, and that will give you quite a bit of extra time, where it's not going to allow the wood to yellow, and you have time to wait out maybe an equipment breakdown, or maybe just scheduling issues and things like that. So.
Right. All right, last question that I have here for the night. Can a customer change the color of the stain, and will it affect the performance of the stain? So Junior, I assume, so Junior's on our customer service team, so he's learning along with you guys tonight. So I love that we can do that. If they want to, with capture and cascade or transformation, if it's in good shape and they want to change the color and go over top of what's on there now, sure, that's fine. If they want to, especially if they're trying to go from a dark stain to a light stain, not possible without going to bare wood. So so going from lighter to darker is fine, or from a yellow to a more red, but they need to test because it is semi-transparent. So anything that's underneath, that's already on the wood, is going to show through. If they were to go with, say red wood over top of natural, they may end up with a weird orange color. So they need to test it first to make sure it's going to work, that they're going to be okay with the look. But again, as long as it's in good shape, that's fine. If they have one wall that's in bad shape and they have to go back down to bare wood anyways, and they're trying to get a match between the wall that they're taking down to bare wood and the other walls, it's going to be a little bit trickier. It can be done, but it's going to be trickier. So they just be aware of that. There are those people out there who just go at it one wall each year and change the color as they go. And so they have, the hodgepodge home for a few years while they go through things. But it's possible. So, oh, yes, Mark. Yeah, okay. I have comments from Mark. Number one, he loves Color Fast. So thanks for the love for Color Fast, Mark. We love it too. And second of all, Mark says blast everything. Blasting is the preferred method, people. We know that's very important to know. It is a preferred method. It is also, for some people, just not part of the budget. So power washing can work when done correctly. So anything else? Any other questions from anybody? Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. You have our email addresses. Let me go back to that slide here so that we end on that for the video. Email us with any questions. You can call our customer service line. That's the main 800 number. You will get a voice, not a recording. And we are happy to be a resource to you guys. So everybody have a good night. Go eat some dinner, something like that. That's what I'm going to do and go home. We will see you all, hopefully a lot of you, next week. Our next webinar that we have focused on stain removal, difficult stain removal. Mark is actually going to be helping to teach that. So hope a lot of you can join us next week again. Same time, same day, same place. We're on Zoom again. We'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, all.